Hello, and welcome to the Race, Wealth, and Health Podcast, a podcast that serves to educate and empower while we explore the intersections of social justice, economic empowerment, and holistic well-being within communities of color. I am your host, Dr. Joycelyn Morris, and I invite you to join me as we dive deep into the crucial topics that shape our lives, challenge the status quo, and strive for a more equitable future for all. Hello. Welcome to another episode of Race, Wealth, and Health Podcast. I am extremely excited to be joined here with Asia, who is our lovely and amazing financial therapist, Asia Evans specifically, who's a licensed mental health counselor, correct? Yeah. And she is joining us to chat about all things kind of like finance and financial therapy, which I find very interesting and such a great intersection of the work that we talk about here. So welcome, Asia.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to dive in. I'm always honored to have these kinds of conversations because I feel like we're definitely not talking about it enough. So whenever I get a chance to talk about money and emotions, I'm like, let's go, let's dive in. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I usually do the thing where I tell people how we met. And actually, the unique thing about Asia and I, we don't have like a super long history. We met and connected through a mutual friend, Dr. Watkins, who was on the podcast. I think she was like maybe the third or fourth guest on the podcast. So, and you guys had worked together previously, correct?
Yeah, we are in the same network of Financial Therapy Association and just utilizing each other's work and her research and talking back and forth. And it's just been a beautiful connection and community to be a part of. Yeah, with Kim, she's great.
Yes. And so again, really excited to have you. I know that you have like over a decade of experience and just how determined you've been around helping people break through the taboo of like keeping their money and emotions a secret, right? And really, I think sometimes people don't always think about those two in relationship to one another, if you will, but I think it's definitely very important. In addition to your practice, right, you're the president of the board of the Financial Therapy Association, and most importantly, very cool, you're the author of Feel Good Finance.
Yeah.
Having been featured in a variety of major news outlets, including the New York Times, Business Insider, NerdWallet, Time, and Teen Vogue. You have certainly been on a mission to get more people engaged in living their best lives while attuning to their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors around money. And on top of all of that, you are a mom of two young children, right?
Mm-hmm. I am. I am busy.
But and busy, right? So, no, that's awesome. So tell me a little bit, or tell the listeners, I would say. We had a really great, intro call, so very excited about that. But tell the listeners a little bit about your background and I guess essentially, you know, anything that you want to add that I maybe didn't cover in terms of your bio. And then also just how did you get into this work?
Yeah. So I always knew I wanted to be a therapist. So I made that decision very young and did the steps to become a therapist. So I have my master's in counseling psychology. I, as you were saying, have worked in the field for over a decade. At this point, it's about 15 years, which sounds really wild to me. But I've worked all over mental health, but it wasn't until I had my own financial awakening, if you will, that I really started diving into money. And that was just coming from being mid 20 something, living my best life in New York and literally spending all my money. I was just having a blast, spending it, living it, loving it, and just having a good time. But I found myself feeling uncomfortable or awkward or weird when I couldn't afford to do some of the things that my friends could do, when I felt like my credit cards weren't going down, considering I was just paying the minimum. I just didn't know. I thought I was doing money, quote unquote, right, the right way, but I needed a crash course education in personal finance. And that's what I gave myself. So I really dove in headfirst to reading and understanding and just trying to find as many resources as possible around personal finance and just understanding money in general, money management and the systems. And that's when I totally fell in love with personal finance and was like, hey, should I be a CFP? Do I want to be a planner? Like, what's going on? But that didn't really feel right to me. I wanted to be in mental health, but I wanted to talk about money. And on that journey, my clients would, very quickly pass over, like, yeah, I'm stressed about this and that and money and going on and blah, 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 and keep going. I'm like, oh, no, 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 back up. What's going on with your money? What's happening? And I think what was going on for me is that I had learned all this new stuff about money, and I wanted other people to not only learn it, but then understand how it was upsetting their mood because that was something that I had gone through. I had felt bad about myself when I couldn't keep up with my friends. I felt like there were parts of my self-esteem that were really slipping, and I don't I never want people to feel that way. I don't like when people are mean to themselves. I don't like when people kind of poo-poo their situations or feel like they're hopeless about getting out of it. And when it kept coming up in the therapy space for me at work, I was like, there is something here. I know I'm not the only one. We need to dive into this. Where do I go? And my research led me to the Financial Therapy Association, as well as the Center for Financial Social Work, as well as Trauma of Money. And I did all of the programming and learned as much as I could and started really formulating how I thought money interacted with our emotions, how I thought it interacted with our mental health, and the connection that we really pretend we can ignore, but cannot ignore.
Mhm.
And I just pretty much made it my life's work. I'm like, this is it. This is what I care about. I'm so passionate about it. That led me to writing Feel Good Finance and just really wanted this information to be more accessible to people because I didn't want people's money baggage to be the thing that was holding them back from living their best life, creating generational wealth. And I wasn't finding resources that were really talking about, hey, why does my relationship with money look like this? So I wrote one.
Awesome. That's amazing. So you said a lot of really great things. I want you to take us, or like me and the listeners, back to that financial awakening. Like, how are you feeling? Because I think it's important to kind of name, like, truly, like, what you were feeling for people to maybe be able to say, "Oh, maybe that's what I was." But like, sometimes, especially when we're not really attuned to our emotions, it's like I'm just feeling some type of way, but I can't really put my finger on it. Like you said, even your clients, they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm kind of stressed about this and this," but they don't really stop to think about, how much money it might be, kind of causing their mental stress. So like what was going on with you kind of at
Yeah.
that time? Yeah.
Yeah. So I can tell you because I've always been somebody who loves digging into my emotions, right? Like blame it on the day job. So
Yeah.
first, I was feeling stressed. I felt like I did not have enough money saved and I did not understand why. And that was stressing me out. I did not understand why my credit cards were still in my life if I was paying them. And a little like nugget is that if you're paying the minimums on your credit cards, you're not paying enough money to erase the balance for the balance to come down. You're just like keeping steady and slowly chipping away. I didn't want to be slowly chipping away, but I didn't understand what I needed to do with my money. So I felt confused. I felt stressed out because I wanted more money in my savings. I wanted my credit cards to be gone and I didn't understand. Honestly, stress was a big one in terms of like, I still had student loans. I lived in New York City. It was expensive. I wanted to go hang out with my friends. I was still paying down credit card debt and I did not understand how people were making this work. So then you fast forward to going out with your friends as like a 26-year-old. Let's go get brunch. Okay, great. Love brunch. Let's get unlimited. Okay, feeling a little bit more uncomfortable. Love that. Now I'm watching after we leave brunch and everyone's got their little mimosas. Let's go shopping. And we're going shopping and then we're getting more drinks. Then we're going to dinner. And I'm like, where is this money supposed to be coming from? How can other people afford this? And I felt bad about myself. Like, honestly, I felt bad about myself. Like, what am I doing that I can't keep up? This is so uncomfortable. I cannot believe all these people can keep up and do this. And not even taking into consideration the context in which people may or may not be able to do it. They could have been in debt too. They could have had their parents helping them pay some of their bills. They may not have had student loans. They could have gotten scholarships. It just looked different, but didn't have the emotional capacity at that age, right? Like your frontal cortex is just getting online to really think about, hey, you have no idea what is going on for everybody else, but you're comparing yourself and feeling bad about it. And that comes up a lot now for my clients in social media and FOMO and what does it look like and what are you doing? So for like me and my elder millennials, if you will, it was YOLO. And we're like, okay, let's spend the money. Let's do it because we only live once and this is what we have to do. It's so important to us. But now it's kind of like, oh my God, now I have FOMO because somebody's doing it and I can't and I feel uncomfortable. So it just is the same kind of feeling, different side of the coin.
Yeah. So as you went through that, right, the 25, 26-year-old, and you were experiencing that, what did you, I guess, kind of eventually even unpack for yourself, right? In terms of
Well, honestly, at that time, I didn't unpack anything because I wasn't even thinking about my relationship to money. I was thinking about money management. So first came the education. So once I got the education, it was like, oh, okay, let's pay more to our debt. That means I need to make sure there's room in my budget. I understand what a budget is. I can save this much money. So it's kind of for me, I went through the more concrete steps of like managing the money first and trying to pay down debt and what that would look like. But honestly, it wasn't until I really started diving into financial therapy and parts of me writing my book, me really diving deep into what was going on for me, into what I was seeing. And that's what the beginning of the book really is about. There's a lot of my story in the book. So it was about the history of being a Black woman and what that looks like. It was about, oh, my mom was probably one of the first young, like she was a kid. Like my mom was born in 1957-ish, 58. Don't kill me, mom. She was probably under 10 getting a bank account. So that's one generation from me. But I didn't think about that. I didn't think about what it meant for my grandmother to be going back to school or the things that just felt really natural, like, oh, yeah, that's just what they do. But how that history was then poured into me around how we manage money. My mom has notoriously always been a saver. And it wasn't until I was starting to do more research and putting these things together, not just for the book research, but then also for myself. And that was really helpful in the journey of starting to untangle my own story with money and, realize in middle school when people are wearing Abercrombie, not only like, why wasn't I wearing Abercrombie? I know why, because my mom's like, I'm not spending $40 on jeans for you. Like, I'm just not doing that. But also realizing that there was a lot of racial context around standards of beauty that I was trying to meet that I would have never fit because I was the wrong skin color, but still trying to meet them. And a lot of times we try to cope with that with money. And especially when you're younger, it's very easy to say, well, if I just bought this, if I had this fit, if I look like this, if I had that shoe, then I'm going to be so hot. I'm going to be amazing. Everybody's going to want to be with me and think I'm the coolest person. And I think that rings true for people as adults too. So it starts when we're kids, but how does kind of money status and that idea show up for you as an adult? And that's what I was unpacking. I feel like we're all always unpacking. This work is never just completely done. It always comes up again.
absolutely. And to that point, before we get into the book, though, I think it'd be good to kind of even ground our listeners. Like, how do you define, or how should our listeners think about, like, what is financial therapy if they've never really heard it before? What does that look like?
Yeah. So financial therapy is a spectrum. There are financial therapists who are doing research. There are financial therapists who are doing more financial coaching. There are financial therapists who are certified financial planners who are going to be on the planning side. And there are also mental health professionals like myself who might be a licensed mental health counselor. They might be a licensed marriage and family therapist. So there are many different, it's a spectrum of what it can look like in many different ways people do this work. But for me, the way I do it is really grounded in therapy around the emotions that are coming up around your money. So I am really here for the emotions. Like we can talk about the concrete behaviors, but I'm not moving your money. I am not telling you how to invest it. I am here to help you understand what the barriers around you taking the next step with your money, what's going on. Why has it been really hard for you to stick to your budget? Why does scarcity keep knocking on your door when you feel like you should be okay financially? Those types of psychological barriers, challenges, emotions that come up that stop you from living your best financial life is what I'm here for.
Got it. Okay. And I think so, because I have a question. So, one follow up on that. When you say, like, for example, what are the barriers? What have you seen as some, like, kind of common barriers that people may have when it comes to managing their money? And I imagine it depends on what profile they're coming from, right? Whether it's
Mhm.
like scarcity versus kind of spending oriented. But I'd be curious to see what are some of the things that you.
Yeah. So I would say the most is people hoarding their money. So just having a lot of money in a bank account, just sitting there. It's not even a high yield savings account. It's just sitting in a everyday, regular savings account, not earning any money for them.
Mhm.
And they don't know why. It's because they feel like they don't have the financial education, which kind of can quickly lead into perfectionism. They feel like they're the first in their family to kind of be investing this way. So that turns into more community work and family dynamics work around what does it mean for me to be able to do this when other people in my family aren't doing this? The discomfort that can come with I live very differently than my family and I love them, but it makes me feel like I'm not as close to them because we have very different life experiences at this point in our life. And what comes up, what does that mean? Am I still a part of the community? Am I different? I don't like that feeling, right? So that barrier can come up. Money avoidance comes up very frequently with my clients. So I'm not going to check my bills. I don't want to check my account. I don't know how much money I'm making, or I am not asking for a raise when I know I could get a raise and probably deserve a raise because I'm a little bit of money avoidance is happening and I don't want to kind of talk about it. So money hoarding, money avoidance, I would say, and then the relational dynamics that come up with money.
So that makes sense. And so, as you mentioned, feel good finance was kind of like your exploration of even your own personal feelings. Tell me and the listeners a little bit more about the book. Like, what should they expect when picking up the book and reading it, and how and who should read it?
Yeah. So I would say anybody who has felt like they have consistently been coming up with these barriers in their life and in their financial lives, but you can't figure out why. It just feels weird. It feels uncomfortable. It feels like no matter how hard you work, you are not getting ahead and you don't understand what's going on. Usually it is about your behaviors with your money, your spending patterns, and your money mindset, honestly. So when you pick up the book and you start reading Feel Good Finance, it's going to take you on the journey of what what creates your money mindset, right? Where do your money beliefs come from? What are your money beliefs? What's your money narrative? And that will walk you through the process of understanding your historical context, right? So for me, that means that I was a descendant of slaves. And how did that impact my ability to understand money under the current system that I live in? How that is like around my mom being a young girl getting a bank account that's around women were not allowed to have their own mortgages before, 1974. Like you just could not do it. So these things happen in our historical lives that we don't always realize play a part in how money is talked about and what we're able to do with money, especially as women and especially as Black women. So it's important to understand that historical context because then you can listen in for the next, which is your personal context of how did the people around me grow up? How did I grow up with the people talking about money around me? What did my grandmother say around money? Did one parent say that they could talk to my brother about money, but they never talked about money to me
Mm,
specifically? And what does that look like? And how did that color my experience and my ideas around what I could or couldn't do with money? And then it goes into different examples of how that may show up in your life. So, one chapter is really around money avoidance. And if I don't look at it, it will go away. And the hope that, like, oh, it will be fine because I don't need to pay attention. I don't need to worry my little heart about it. So it goes into that. There's another chapter that's really about overspending and feeling like you need something when you go to this store. But, you are putting yourself in a precarious financial situation when you keep buying it. And we all know the store that shall not be named right now.
huh.
But that was one of the stores for me that I felt like I would go to consistently and overspend. So it really goes into these different examples of how it might show up for you and then helps you create a plan of how you can get to the place of living your best life and feeling like you're in control and empowered with your money.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, that's awesome and amazing. Are there any like kind of stats around people in terms of money or, financial therapy that you would want to share and financial literacy? Obviously, have you on during this month where it is, financial literacy month. So really excited to have you chat about it. And to your point, the feelings and emotions around your decision making with money is definitely a huge part of it, in addition to, in addition to getting the education.
Yeah, so I just think that people don't always realize that you are capable of creating wealth for yourself. It doesn't mean it's not hard, right? It doesn't, I am always going to be somebody who's going to be optimistic around it, but you do need to take the necessary steps to make the money moves to grow your wealth. So, one stat that was just flabbergasted by was when it said that women typically leave about $1 million on the table over the course of their career because they did not negotiate. I was like, that is awful, thinking about that. And it's not, okay, hey, I have $1 million in my pocket, right? Or I invested $1 million, but it could have been a $5,000 bonus here. It could have been a $10,000 raise here during that quarter, or a big pay jump of $50,000, or negotiating to get the same rate that some of your other team members may get over the course of your career. That's a lot of money. And that to me really stood out as we need to feel more confident with our money and having these kinds of conversations. We know that Black women in general are getting degrees at amazing rates, right? We're like the most educated demographic right now, which is fantastic, but we're also in the most student loan debt. And what does that look like? And how do we carry that responsibility of, yes, let's continue to get educated, but how do we also manage the expectation of what that debt's going to look like when we do graduate and the roles that we take on? So a lot of that influences how we think about money, how we think about ourselves. And I wanted to really free people of their money baggage so that we can just get this money and, make some changes.
Yeah. And so what were some of the main changes, speaking of making changes, that you found most useful even in your own personal situation?
Yeah, so I would say, I mean, debt to me has always been a big deal because I do have a lot of student loan debt, and just understanding it and being able to manage it and not feel like I couldn't move forward with my life because I had debt.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important because a lot of people feel like, well, I can't get married, I can't have kids, I have student loan debt, I can't do these things. Can we talk about, like, Mr. Obama had student loan debt into his 40s. Who knew? We don't look at it that way because you're like, well, no, everybody's doing better than I am, right? Everybody's got it. Then everybody gets it. I just don't get it. I'm so special. I'm like, why? So I think understanding and managing debt and learning how I needed to feel and what I need to do with my money to feel like I could still go through these life milestones, like get married, like buy a house, like have kids, and feel like I could handle myself financially at the same time and pay things off, which was great. So debt has always been a big thing for me. And then I would also say uncoupling my self-esteem, and I say this to all of my clients all the time, like
Mhm.
uncoupling my self-esteem with my net worth and how much I have and how much my salary is, and just really pulling those two things apart. What you're able to afford has nothing to do with what you deserve. And I think we really connect those way too frequently.
That's yes. Yes, and that's a really big one, right? Because everything that we see, especially when we talk about the quote unquote American dream, right? Everything that we are bought into is around, you know, access to money. So like the job, the house, the white picket fence, the whatever, all these things require money. And you know, like, how do you decouple that, right? Like, how do you get your people, or how did you do it for yourself, and how do you, like, sort of counsel people to start thinking about themselves separately and apart from their net worth, or the thing that they
Mhm.
do that helps them to generate their net worth? Like, and just all
Yeah.
of those things that, especially in this day and age with social media, where all of those things are just kind of constantly heightened in terms of like social status, jobs, access to the things that you can do.
Yeah. So it's, both psychological and concrete. So
Mm.
one thing I would say is I think like a no spend time period can be really important for people. Like, I need you to kind of go on a diet of spending. So let's have a no spend month and just get yourself out of the mentality of, oh, I'm just going to go buy that really quick. Oh, I'm going to go shop. Oh, I feel uncomfortable. I'm going to go buy this food, even though I have groceries at my house. I'm going to, you put in whatever it is that you do. I know for myself, I love to go eat when I'm happy, when I'm sad, when I'm stressed, when I want to hang out with friends. Like food and ambiance is the key to my heart. I am just really about that kind of self-care in that type of way. Um, but having a no spend gets you out of the kind of dopamine rush that quickly hits you when you are spending your money so quickly, scrolling, clicking the link, buying it. It's on its way to your house. It may be there in like by the end of the day type of thing. So get yourself out of that kind of very quick loop that you might be in. And then what I would say is really taking a look at what you want. Like, what do you really want? And it would be shocking how difficult it is for people to answer that question. Whenever I ask my clients, they really struggle with what do you want? And why? And really drilling into, is that a you want? Is that somebody else's want for you? Like really getting concrete about what you want. And that then helps you get concrete about what your enough is. And this is something that I could talk about till I'm blue in the face. What is your enough? There is always going to be more. There
Yeah.
will always be more. But what is your enough? Not your enough to feel, and listen, you can do it in different tiers, right? I need this enough to feel safe. My needs are met, right? Okay, beyond my needs being met, a little extra, great. But what does your Lux life look like? What do you want
Yeah.
that to look like? And just be aware of it so that you can decide, like, do you want that because it seems cool for other people? And that goes back to the previous question. Is that your enough, or do you want that because it's going to make you feel better about yourself? And if it's going to make you feel better about yourself, then me and you need to have a conversation about your self-esteem, because that sounds like you need to do some self-esteem work at its core, not around the money. Money is a beautiful way for us to cope with how we feel. And if we're feeling bad about ourselves, it can be really easy to say, well, I'm this and I have that, and add all these qualifiers that you can purchase to make you feel better. But I want you to actually feel better about yourself when you go to sleep at night. So like, what do we need to do to then start diving into like the real mental health, emotional work of how do we bolster your self-esteem?
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, that no spend month, I was like, when you say no spend,
I'm like,
what
you can
about
buy your
like,
groceries, you can
okay,
pay all
right,
your
right.
bills.
'Cause I'm like, could even, and I like to think that I'm pretty good about my money, but I don't know. I would have to find out the rules of this no spend to determine
Right.
whether or not I could truly
Right. And what feels hard?
about no spend. Well, I guess it just depends, right? So certainly, like, I'm assuming I can still buy my groceries, and maybe it is even within that putting myself on a budget, right? Like, not just the limited, kind of being very clear about like these are the groceries. Not that hard, but moderately hard, but just like definitely
Mhm.
making sure not eating out, right? And so like
Yep.
we're sticking within whatever the food budget is, right? So
Yep.
and whatever that might be. Outside of that, not so much, other than just
Mhm.
basic necessities, if there's like toiletries or things that would be needed. But surprisingly, I feel like I could probably manage so long as I still buy my groceries.
Yeah. Like,
Um,
see how it goes. And then what you're doing, you're putting yourself on the diet to then be like, oh, I really need that stuff? Like, what was going on that I just felt like I had to buy it all the time?
yeah. Well, it's
And you don't
interesting
know.
that you use the term diet, just as someone who's, works out and sort of that diet at different times from a food perspective. But even
Yep.
in that, I will say as like my relationship with food and all of that has sort of changed over the years as it's needed to for me to, just to be healthier, to
Yep.
achieve the goals I want. That has improved my budget too, though, right? Like 'cause
Mhm.
the amount of money I used to live in New York as well. I think we talked about
Yep.
that before, but like the amount, and so especially when I was there, going out all the time, eating out, happy hours, it's just what you did. It's part of the social scene. But the amount I think of money that I get to save between being more thoughtful about the way I eat, right? So it limits the amount of times I'm going out to eat, period, just because
Right.
of what I'm trying to achieve from a body perspective, health perspective, and then also the ability of what I get in terms of just, cutting out and cutting back on that and working remotely too. So then I'm also not
Mhm.
like going out and buying lunch, like most of the stuff, like most of my expenses are truly like on groceries.
Yep.
And that's helped though, right? And so I think it's great that you use the term diet because it's pretty interchangeable. And then I was just gonna ask as we kind of start to wrap it, like, how do you see, the tenets of this podcast, which is race, wealth, and health intersecting with the work that you do?
Yeah. I mean, it has everything to do with the work that I do. I think not just by way of who I am and how I identify, but I think that also then attracts my clientele, which are mostly Black women and understanding where they are in their life and what does this mean for them. So it is how they show up in their families, right? Like I have a good amount of Gen Z clients who work in tech and they're trying to figure out like, okay, I'm thinking about getting married. Do I want to have kids? I know I'm going to have to take care of my parents in some way, shape, or form. Is my mom going to be okay? What does that look like for me? Am I saving enough money for both me and potentially to help her out too? So these are things that my clients are trying to navigate, which is in the intersection of all three, right?
Yeah.
Of just understanding how to manage that from a cultural standpoint, being a Black woman, but it's also then thinking about ethnic standpoints as well too, because some of my clients are first generation American. And culturally, there may be different practices that happen in America, but that are coming from their country of origin or their parents' country of origin, and
Mhm.
figuring out what that means to them too. So it's very difficult to, I don't think you can separate them the same way that I would say money is not emotional. That is BS. Money is emotional. You cannot separate money from our emotions because money is how you take care of yourself. Money is how you take care of the people you love. That is emotional.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think a lot of things have happened with the economy. There's a lot of concern and worry and anxiety and
Yeah.
fear.
Yeah.
And even though people know, hey, I might be in the markets for another 30 years, I'm not retiring. Nobody likes to see their money feel like it's evaporated. That doesn't feel good.
No.
It feels like, hey, am I going to be okay? Is my older self going to be okay? Can I retire? What's going to happen? We like security. Humans like security. We want to know that we're going to be okay. And right now, the way our systems work, we need money to make sure that we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And that is emotional. So I feel like my work completely is right smack dab in the middle of that, and understanding how people can manage their emotions so that they're not harming themselves financially because they were unsure of what to do financially and made some huge money moves when they were anxious or in crisis or fearful. I'm like, if you are feeling a lot of feelings, if you're sweating, if your heart is racing, you're upset about your money, that is not the time to touch your money. And that's what I really want people to understand is when you are in a crisis, you're trying to reach for something that's going to make you feel better as quickly as humanly possible. And usually that's not going to be moving your money. You think it is, and it will be maybe in the short term, but in the long term, it could end up hurting you. And I don't want that.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me, what is next for you in terms of any big projects or books or things or that you're working on?
So right now, I'm just gonna keep on, talking about feel good finance. I'm still seeing my clients. I have a few slots open, which is very exciting. And I'm noodling on a second book, like just some ideas of brewing, starting some research. Yeah, but really just talking about money and emotions as much as humanly possible and hoping that we all get this money.
Absolutely. So I usually ask one book, but we know the book that you'll recommend, Feel Good Finance. I'll be sure to link it in our show notes. But maybe what's one quote or tip that you typically either, offer up to your clients or just sort of one that you use to kind of ground and center yourself when it comes to
Yeah.
this.
What I would say, and I tell people this all the time, and I usually kind of, my last tidbit of information is like, you are not alone. It feels like you are the only person going through this struggle. I can promise you, you are not. You just need to talk to people about it. You need to find somebody that you trust, that you can feel like you can open up to and start having these conversations about money. So you're not alone. And please talk to people about money because we're all trying to navigate it and assuming that everybody is doing a great job at it, where your bestie may be feeling the exact same way and feeling really alone in their problems too. But you guys can connect and talk about it and be accountable to each other. And that can put you in a fantastic position. So you're not alone. And please talk to your people about money.
Yeah. And was that something that you did? Was that something that you found in terms of like helpful in terms of creating community around the conversation? And
Yeah, at the time, it was still very taboo to talk about money. So I would kind of talk about it. And then I would talk about it like in the online communities I was in. But I will never forget me and one of my friends, and this was a while ago too. we had the same exact job and we talked about money. We were both getting married. We were talking about our debt and student loan debt. Like it took us a bit, but we finally got there and we talked about negotiating. And she's like, Asia, I know you make more money than I do because I know you negotiated and I didn't. And I did. I made $3,000 more than her. So it wasn't a ton, but it was something when we were doing the exact same job. So that was just a beautiful, hard story for her. But I was like, this have to negotiate, never not negotiate in terms of talking to your friends about money. But yeah, at this point, everybody knows if you're talking to Asia, money's coming up at least once, at least.
So as we wrap up, like anything that you want to just leave the listeners with, like what are you hoping that they take away from our conversation today?
Yeah, I want people to get honest with themselves about what is going on with them and their money and reach out and get supports to figure out how to take the next step to level up. So if that means buying the book, great. If that means finding a financial therapist, great. If that means starting a book club where you read money books with your best friends so that you all can get educated together and talk about it, great, do that. So I just want people to get honest with themselves, look at them like their life and look at their money and decide, hey, what do I need to change to feel like I can live my best life?
Yeah. Awesome. And lastly, how can people stay connected with you? Any social handles, websites that you want to offer up? And of course, we'll link it in the show notes as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on Instagram. So you can find me at AJAE Therapy. So Asia E Therapy. You can also find me on my website, which is asiaevanscounseling.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Asia. I appreciate this conversation. I'll probably have you come back and chat a little bit more, but I think we've given our listeners enough to like at least get started. And I think I'm really excited for, for folks to be able to hear about this and really be able to start thinking, not just assuming that they're not good at with money, as you mentioned, but kind of like where do those assumptions come from? And I think
Yes.
this piece thing is also knowing that they're not alone. Like we're all, especially right now, I think we're all trying to figure this thing out with all the volatility that we're all recently experiencing. So I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This was a pleasure.
Absolutely. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Well, that's all for today, folks. Enjoyed the show? Be sure to like and rate the podcast. You can find the Race, Wealth, and Health podcast on multiple platforms, including Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and turn on your notifications so you never miss an episode. I also want to hear from you, so don't forget to connect with me on social media. You can follow the podcast on Instagram and Facebook at Race, Wealth, Health. By joining the online community, you'll stay updated on the latest episodes, behind the scenes insights, and engaging discussions. Share your thoughts, comments, and questions there. I appreciate your support in sharing the podcast with your friends, family, and colleagues who may also find value in these conversations. Thank you again for joining me on this journey. Until next time, take care, stay informed, and keep up the good fight for equality.